Hello, Chris Green here with the Flood Insurance Guru, and today we're talking about how to avoid flood zone. Remember, like the one you see right here behind me. That's a question we get every day, and today we're going to talk about that. So how do you avoid flood zones? Well, in order to avoid flood zones, you've got to know flood zones. So you've got to know maybe when flood insurance is required, when it's not, where are flood claims happening. So we're going to discuss all those different things in this video quickly for you. First of all, let's talk about flood zones. And we're talking about non-required versus required, special flood hazard area. Like you see here right behind me, we're in an AE flood zone. That's a 100-year flood zone. Does this mean that it's only going to flood every 100 years? No, absolutely not. It strictly means it's a probability 1 in every 100 chances. So when you're looking at understanding flood zones, remember, anything really that begins with A or V is generally going to require you to have flood insurance if you have a mortgage. If it's a B, X, or a C, these are going to be what's called minimum risk. They're not going to require you. Does that mean you don't need flood insurance on these? Absolutely not. Almost 30% of claims actually come out of areas where it's not required. So now that you know the zones and you understand the zones, do these zones really truly dictate the risk? No. In order to avoid certain flood zones, you want to understand your flood risk score. This is a score that a lot of private companies use. There's a lot of different risk data that's used to help customers understand what the true flood risk score is, because even though you have a non-required area, it doesn't mean that your property is not going to flood. It doesn't mean you may not have a high risk flood score. It just may mean that FEMA maps have not been updated. So how do you avoid these zones? Well, the first thing is knowing the zone, like we mentioned. Now, you want to look for what's called a standard flood zone determination form. This is usually a piece of paper that comes through the National Flood Insurance Program or a third party telling you what flood zone you're in. That's step one. Step two, as I said, knowing your flood risk, because there may be certain areas you want to avoid compared to others. So this is how you avoid maybe some of these special flood hazard areas. But remember, just because you're not in a special flood hazard area doesn't mean you don't have a high chance of flooding. So if you've got questions on how to avoid certain types of zones, how to understand them, click below to visit our website, floodinsuranceguru.com. Remember, we have an educational background on flood mitigation, which means we're here to help you simplify flood insurance and understanding flood risk through education. Thank you.